Welcome back, everybody, to Psychedelics Today. We're here with Johanna Hilla. Johanna, what's up?
Well, yeah, it's going pretty well, I'd say.
I don't think you've ever really been on the podcast besides that episode with John Cobb. And I think you probably deserve, I don't know, a little bit of intro. And who are you?
Oh, well, I'm the coordinator of education and training at Psychedelics Today. I help to run Vital, as you probably know, and maybe some of the listeners know as well. I'm originally from Finland, but I currently live in the UK. I have a background in psychology and religious studies. I wrote my master thesis on the work of Carl Jung, and since then I've also appeared on your guys' site in the form of this course on Jungian psychology and psychedelics. At the moment, I'm doing my PhD in philosophy of science at the University of Exeter. And yeah, well, that probably is sufficient to start with.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We haven't really had you on the podcast, even though you're a rock star and really running Vital and have just been a huge part of this program and Psychedelics Day in general. So thanks so much for your work, and yeah, a fun journey ahead.
Well, it's been so much fun to be part of it. I'm very grateful and super excited for what's to come.
Yeah. So we're here in Montego Bay down in Jamaica. We just wrapped up our fourth Vital retreat, and our first one here in Jamaica. We're running 2 retreats here in Jamaica for Vital. So yeah, it's fun. We're finally getting to be in person a lot more, which is nice. Getting to meet our students in person. The retreats are a wonderful kind of part of the Vital experience and course. So I guess we should probably dig in. I mean, most people probably know about Vital, but anything that you want to say about the program to kind of kick this podcast off?
Sure. Well, Vital, as probably a lot of you listeners don't know, but I'll just introduce it briefly, is a 12-month psychedelic education program for anybody really who's interested in the field, but also specifically for those who are interested in becoming practitioners. We have a program that runs from April for the whole year. We run weekly webinars with experts in the field, and we also have study groups where people integrate their learning and also have a lot of fun and connect with one another. And in addition to this, we also run a bunch of webinars and all sorts of great stuff. And we have received really amazing feedback from our students from the year that we are just wrapping up now. And it's been just really amazing to see this project evolve and develop and grow. And I hope that this is just the very beginning of it all.
It seems like it. So you kind of came in just as we were developing Vital. So I'd love to maybe hear a little bit about like your process. You helped to teach the Jung course, Imagination as Revelation. And then you kind of came on as we were launching Vital. And I'm just curious to hear what were some of your thoughts kind of going on, kind of stepping into this role to be a program coordinator, manager? Yeah. Were you excited? What was going through your mind?
I guess when I first started working with PT, Vital was sort of mentioned in passing, but I didn't really know what my role was going to be with it. And then when you said that you would like me to help to manage it and be in a central role for it, I was obviously so excited. And I couldn't quite believe that this kind of role would actually open up. And the whole curriculum, the way in which it's structured with the 5 elements, the way in which it emphasizes experiential learning and process-oriented thinking, and incorporates all of these transpersonal elements, but also has a really sufficient amount of clinical backing. I just thought that it was really brilliantly structured, which I think you did most of that work. And I thought that this is exactly what we need right now. I think this is what people who are entering the field need, and like this kind of information that is so comprehensive and it's presented to people by the experts who've been working in the field for such a long time. And also there's that possibility to directly engage with them. And the fact that this has really just been made possible due to the pandemic and the fact that we've moved online so rapidly. I just couldn't really believe that it was all happening, to be honest, launching a big online program like this.
Yeah, the pandemic really shifted things. Originally, the idea was to kind of mimic a little bit of our breathwork training with Dream Shadow, and it was going to be all in person. And then the pandemic happened, and yeah, we kind of made that online shift, which I appreciate. It does make it a little bit more accessible. It cuts down on travel, even though we do have the retreat component that people come to. It does make it more accessible to pretty much everybody in the world, which is crazy. Just thinking about like where a lot of our students are coming from. Like, it's not just United States based, right? We have students all over the world, which is super cool. I'm always like so surprised. I'm like, oh, whoa, this is pretty awesome to have students engage from all over the world. But the retreat element, and I think that I would love to have more in-person work. I think as we have been getting back in person and doing this, a lot of that work and learning does happen in person, the relationships. But yeah, that online component really does make it accessible and intimate too, when we have our study groups and people are able to kind of break out into those smaller groups and get to know their cohort a little bit more.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure how that was going to unfold and whether people were really going to be able to form really intimate connections. But it's, I've seen it over and over again that Zoom, even though it can be a bit of a nuisance and obviously it doesn't really compare to in-person experiences, or it's at least it is different, but the convenience of it, the accessibility, and I think it really has brought into the program a lot of people who wouldn't have attended otherwise. Mm-hmm. So it is an asset for sure. And I think that spending 1 year with the same group who you meet with, I think that really has created some really long-lasting friendships within the program.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So when you said like this type of education is really important right now, I'd love to hear maybe some more thoughts about that.
Well, I think obviously the field is developing at a pretty remarkable rate. So many people are entering the field. They are very excited and full of enthusiasm and wanting to put their efforts in. And, as we're also seeing in Oregon and Colorado, pretty soon people are actually going to be able to practice. And that just means that there needs to be something that meets that enthusiasm. We need to have people who have been building on existing frameworks like we do on, for instance, the Graphian model, but also other models, and have really thought about things for a little bit longer than just, a few months or a year or, I do feel like it's because of the media, it's kind of boomed. And I think that's amazing. It's amazing that so many people are excited about it. So many people are changing their lives around just to get involved in the field. But yeah, I think it's just the education, but also the community that creates accountability. I think these are really the essential components for doing work in any kind of work in the field of psychedelics.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, like as you're speaking, I'm just even thinking about like when you brought up the media and like trying to, I mean, this is something we've been talking about in class a little bit too, like as we've entered into like the integration, preparation kind of topics, like managing expectations, right? And there is a lot of that kind of like media boom around it and all the hype stories. And, we've definitely have had lots of hype stories here on psychedelics today too. So we're part of it, but also that, being realistic and learning how to manage expectations and looking at the science, looking at like real world evidence of like hearing people's stories and really kind of also hearing the difficulties that happen in psychedelic experiences. And I think, the more that people can get out there and, be educated around this and go out into their communities and support, I think the field has a better chance, right? Like, because there could be some backlash if things really kind of, I think that's a fear for a lot of people, the 60s kind of all over again. But I think we're in a different space where that's probably not going to happen. But there's always that possibility, right?
Definitely. And it's easy to get carried away with the hype. I've certainly been there, but it's also, and what I really love about your guys' work is this sort of transparency and neutrality, where you really just try to see as many angles for each story and situation as possible, and yeah, just present it as it is. It's like nothing comes without its downsides. And also, I think this is for people who are interested in working as practitioners. I think it's not for the faint of heart. I think it's a really demanding and psychologically challenging, emotionally challenging career path. And anybody who wishes that upon themselves, I think there's a lot of things to take into account. I mean, it's amazing as well, and very rewarding.
Well, maybe we can dig into that a little bit. I know this is has kind of been like the first time you've been sitting for like breathwork experiences and kind of like maybe these group psychedelic experiences in this retreat format, and wondering like, you're saying it can be really intense, right? So I'm wondering like, how has it been for you to be sitting for breathwork and these other experiences when people are going pretty deep? Like, did it meet your expectations? Were you expecting something else, or was it like, whoa, this is much different than what I thought it would be like?
Yeah, I've had some experiences facilitating for friends, not in a group setting before, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. But yeah, I guess the emotional density and the kind of the charge that happens in a room when people are either doing some kind of plant medicine ceremoniously or doing breath work, I think it's always really something tangible, and it's a great privilege to witness people going into these deep psychological processes. But yeah, I mean, obviously it also takes something from you. You really have to be very present there for many hours, and you go through the experience with the people as a witness, even though you don't know what they're going through, but you're still going through it with them in a way. And yeah, I think it's really remarkable what kind of spaces of healing can happen. But I'm not going to say that I'm not feeling a little bit anxious always, like going into these situations still.
But I think that's healthy. Something I've been saying at some of these retreats is that like I always have a healthy dose of anxiety before any retreat or any sort of work. Because we don't always know what's going to come up for folks, right? Like we can do as much preparation, intention setting, relationship building, but also we sometimes don't know what's going to come up for folks. And I think that's healthy to have some of that anxiety. And I heard this, I was telling a bunch of people this throughout the past few months, but yeah, I was watching a snowboarding video. I was probably like 18 or something like that. And they were snowboarding out in Alaska, and I'm young and be like, that would be awesome. Like, and then I hear them say, if you're not afraid or anxious to be out here, you shouldn't be out here, because the mountains are alive. Nature is alive. It's always changing. It's always moving. And, I think similar to these experiences, like we are working with like, just these interesting states. Some people like to say that plants have an intelligence, they're alive, and you can sometimes feel that, right? And it's like we're working with like this living intelligence and tapping into these like collective fields, and we don't always know what's going to pop up. And that's interesting, exciting, but also nerve-wracking. And that I think is totally healthy. I think if you're not anxious, there's like something to be like,
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree. Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Yeah. So I guess what's been something you've learned throughout this whole journey in Vital? I mean, we're almost at a year. I can't believe we only have like 9 more weeks left of the program as of today. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey. I mean, it's been keeping us both busy. I haven't really been recording a lot of podcast episodes and, pulling back on certain work here at PT to really focus on Vital with you and the other team members. And it's been a wild ride. So I would love to hear maybe, what have you learned about yourself or just about psychedelic education in general?
Yeah. By the way, I'd also like to hear your answer to this question, but I can go first. I think first thing that comes to mind is that the power of connection really transcends technology and physical locations. I think that was one of the best takeaways from it, that it's, even though sometimes it's a bizarre thing because you're working behind the screen all day, and you may not even be interacting with that many people day to day. It's just a lot of emails and a lot of Zoom time. But then you get to meet people in person and actually speak with them, and they share with you about the impact that the course has had in their lives. That's just so moving. And yeah, every time I'm just like, wow, it's just such an amazing thing to be part of. So I think that was one thing. I think second thing is like Zoom anxiety doesn't really go away. Like, it's just like you're always thinking, oh my God, man, what if my internet is just gonna crash? And oh no. Yep. But yeah, I mean, most things have gone pretty well. I think we managed without sort of really major distractions there. Yeah, I think I also really learned that I really love doing this work, just meeting people and being able to just sort of share the kind of like education that I've had, which is like, the sort of bits of, psychology and Jungian psychology, and like talk with people about like how this can help one to understand these kinds of states and how they can be really essential tools on the path to integration. And yeah, I just really love witnessing people's growth journeys and transformations. Yeah, I think those come up first. Cool, what about you?
Yeah, I guess I've always, since I've kind of, this is an idea that kind of got birthed. We've always wanted to provide some long form education. Like Joe and I started off with navigating psychedelics, and that was navigating psychedelics lessons on self-care and integration. We originally launched that in 2017. And then we started offering the navigating psychedelics for clinicians and therapists in 2019. And we've always wanted to have like a longer form type of training. But yeah, it was like, how do we do this? And I feel like navigating psychedelics was like kind of the building block, right? And then I was also thinking, as I mentioned, like really would love for this to be like, intellectually rigorous, but also personally, like personal development, right? And that's why I really wanted to include a lot of these in-person retreats, and was thinking about our breathwork training. It was like 5 or at least 4 in-person 5-day modules. And I thought like, that's a really awesome way to really kind of dig into this work. I think doing your own inner work can be really important for kind of understanding this stuff. And again, doesn't need to be with psychedelics. It could be breath work, dream work, just having a journaling practice, just something that gets you engaged with your own inner process and cultivating a little bit more self-awareness around it. And so, yeah, as we shifted online, I was thinking like, I wonder how this is going to work, I mean, we knew it was going to work because, we've been doing online education for a while. But so I guess the thing that I don't know. Yeah, there's just so much. I'm trying to like piece it all together in my mind right now. I'm like going in multiple different directions. The community piece, that's something that's been like really an important part of this. It's like the community piece and just seeing people come together. And that's been really cool to see throughout this program. Oh, I think I know where I was going. So yeah, we have like that intellectual aspect, the more kind of like science-based. We have the researchers, the therapists, the scientists. They come in, they present. But, I've also really been appreciating more of kind of like the process-oriented learning, like using those study groups as a way to really kind of process what's going on. And I just think a lot about my education at Burlington College. I didn't have like that traditional college experience where you sit in front of a lecture hall and you get lectured at. I went through this undergrad program in transpersonal psychology where it was like very small. I think sometimes we had like 5 students in a class, and the classes were like 3 hours long, and you had to show up and do all your work and like, do your homework. And because if you didn't, it was pretty awkward to sit in class for 3 hours and not contribute anything. And so, but I noticed kind of like the magic that would come out of that, the connections that were forming when, the teacher is also with the students exploring together. Like that felt like so cool. It's like we're just like sitting here trying to process all this information in a different way, and it wasn't so like, you know, somebody just lecturing at you. And I know that maybe that process oriented approach can be really difficult for some people, because I think I don't know, maybe our academic kind of like upbringing, there is that like kind of lecturer type of presentation, and that's what we want. We want maybe sometimes people to tell us things. But I think when it comes to like psychedelic education, again, we don't always know, right? And how do we really kind of encourage and empower people to find some of that within themselves? And, you know, I think a way that we do that is bring people together to kind of discuss all these topics in an interesting way. So that's been like a really interesting process of just like, you know, delivering this throughout the year, and again, seeing like how powerful some of these containers are. Somebody in a group just said we should switch this from being called a study group to an integration group.
Yeah, I love that.
Because it just feels like we're just constantly using this space to really like integrate everything that we're learning. Yeah, but and then on the other side, I mean, and I guess this is on the more technical kind of program development side, just thinking like, yeah, what are we doing here? Like, how do we want to like organize the program? Which modules feel good? Which modules feel like we can like, you know, move around? And we did do that for next year. And, you know, there are kind of slight little adjustments, but, you know, we learned, okay, we probably should have taught that one live than having like something pre-recorded, right? Or, you know, we were going to teach a lot of the navigation skills and navigating difficult experiences and stuff like that at the retreats. But then we realized, you know, we also need space at retreats. And so let's kind of remove some of that didactic learning and just create space for people to be with their experiences, because that's also a lot too. And the reason why I wanted to do more didactic learning during the retreat was because that's also how the Gibsons would do it. They would do like maybe 2 hours in the morning of some didactic stuff, and then we would do breath work. But I've also been really appreciating the space at retreats to just hang out, connect. Also, I thought with our Costa Rica retreat, just how important integrating some somatic practices are. You know, I know we had like a lot of movement, yoga, dance, but then also we had CrossFit there, which, you know, I wasn't too sure how that was going to go. You know, I've never really done CrossFit before. And Marco, the CrossFit coach instructor, was amazing, really great personality. And I was always surprised, like, you know, seeing all those people at 6 a.m. on the beach, like doing CrossFit. But it also sounded like that really was helpful. And coming from, the somatic world, like, you know, we can only sit in our mind and sit in those spiritual planes for too long before we realize, oh yeah, we have to take care of our bodies. And so I think being able to integrate a lot more of these, you know, practices, just being somatically oriented, whether that's through movement, yoga. I mean, I would love to even just like do a retreat that includes snowboarding and like flow states. Like, you know, let's do a breathwork retreat somewhere in the mountains during the winter, and you know, do breathwork and self-exploration, but then also have the body component and do some, you know, snowboarding or, you know, hiking. I think we really need to integrate that a little bit more. I do find that sometimes when we just focus on the mental and spiritual, you know, it can get a little muddy sometimes, right? It feels a little too like disembodied. And I don't know, for me, a lot of this work is about getting disembodied, but then also coming back to the body. And that's where kind of like that integration happens, to bring that wisdom, bring that information down into the body and live it. And so, you know, that's something I think I've been learning as well. It's like, how do we incorporate more of the somatic element into this work? Because I think psychedelics need a lot more of that somatic element, but that's also my biased opinion.
I think you're absolutely right. And I do think that the CrossFit element, for instance, in Costa Rica, it connected people in a different way to their bodies. So the breathing experiences, I think they were really deep. And I mean, I don't know, I've been only at one breathwork retreat prior to that one. So I don't have really, I don't know, I don't have a very good overview of like what it usually looks like. But generally, I would think that when people are just like much more, they're relaxed in their bodies after having done some kind of physical work, that breathing process also hits really different. Mm-hmm. And yeah, same with plant medicines. But also, it's just like, what I really liked about it is that, you know, people don't just take 1 week off their like healthy routines, but it's just like the retreat in itself offers the possibility for people to already start building healthier habits and to be more in tune with their bodies. And yeah, then they can go back home and they can be like, wow, actually, I really liked waking up at 6 a.m. in the morning and going to CrossFit. Maybe I'm just going to find a way to continue doing that somehow. Yeah, I mean, Alice, she's just been like a massive inspiration in this. And obviously, like bringing her whole CrossFit team from Pennsylvania down. Yeah, so I think the somatic element, I think it's absolutely bang on. And then the interpersonal component, obviously super important. And this is what we want to continue working on even more next year. It's just like, how can we also help the students to self-organize so that there's even more integration than what we offer currently? Because at the moment we have two sessions of preparation and 2 sessions of integration associated with each retreat. But we have also seen that sometimes people would like to have a little bit more time, and then we obviously run into some resource problems because we are organizing so many retreats around the world. But yeah, it's been lovely to see that we have some students who are actually taking initiative in leading some groups and coming together and just doing peer support, which I think in a lot of cases, well, I don't know, I don't want to say compare it to therapy or something like that, but it definitely helps a lot.
Yeah. And I'd love to, we've talked about this a bunch, just like, again, coming back to that community and how do we get everybody like more engaged and having them offer some peer support sessions in the future to other cohorts and students. Like, yeah, we want to kind of build this community, which I think is important, right? I think that's a really important part of all this work. How do you see Vital kind of developing over the next few years?
Again, a question I'd love for you to answer as well. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this year has been just about very much focusing on the present and just making sure that everything is running smoothly as we're doing things for the first time. But I foresee that we would be able to continue constantly developing different kind of partnerships with universities and other types of education providers so that we can bring in constantly more professionals who can teach through us and create courses, and we can just offer all of this to our students included. I would also love to see more in-person events. So obviously we have Convergence now.
Yeah.
That's going to be a great meeting point for our students. And then we're hoping to also organize some Vital meetings associated with different psychedelic conferences as well. And yeah, just bring people together a little bit more. I mean, I would love to also, you mentioned the other day that we may be getting CMEs, which is super cool. So far, we've been able to offer CEs. That's a really big part of what we want to continue developing. So forming professional partnerships, maybe in the future with MAPS, so that we can continue legitimizing the kind of education that we offer. And yeah, obviously it would be really great to have physical location somewhere. That's one big one. Have an office.
Vital University or Institute.
Yeah, I mean that's the long-term goal. That's the long-term goal. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, all those things that you mentioned, like it would be awesome for like more partnerships with folks, whether that's through academic institutions, also retreat partners, like offering more retreat locations throughout the world and different types of experiences. I think the one thing that I've been really just thinking about is a framework and really kind of developing that a little bit more. Like when I think about like what is vital for like a psychedelic practitioner, I do think about like, harm reduction, integration, like those are pretty vital and basic. But then I also have been really thinking about like foundational skills. I think the more that I've been doing this work, sometimes the more I just come back to foundations. Like, how do we develop like a good mindfulness practice, good somatic awareness, and then really kind of utilizing our breath and kind of like, somatic techniques to help to like regulate people's nervous systems a little bit more. And, I think I've just been learning that over the years of like kind of doing deep dives and then just like noticing my, nervous system, like, whoa, this is too much, and I didn't have those skill sets. And so for me, I think it is vital to have some of these foundational skill sets. And, I think sometimes it's not as sexy. We just want to really focus on the substance and the psychedelic experience. But I also think it is really vital and important to be able to understand, these foundational points. And so, yeah, really kind of weaving in more of the somatic elements, the transpersonal elements, obviously, the clinical aspects as well. But yeah, just really kind of focusing on the framework, like, what are we doing? What are we delivering here? Obviously we were delivering, a wonderful certification in psychedelic therapies and integration. So our students are getting, that really great foundation for, being able to support those in their community, their clients, opening up their integration practice. And the other thing that I would love to see is as more states come online. So, this is a totally new field. And, people ask us all the time about like the certificate and state regulations. And so I hope as the field develops, we can, look at kind of like more maybe national standards. And that's going to probably be, many years out. We do have Oregon, we do have Colorado now coming online. I mean, they don't have any of their rules or regulations drafted yet. But as more training programs are coming together, as more states like submit initiatives to legalize psychedelics, like I'm really, thinking about like how does this like just, I guess, like become more nationally recognized in a way, so people don't need to keep taking programs to meet their state requirements. And I know there are people working on that. They're trying to create some standards. And there's also some blocks that come up with that, right? Like sometimes it's standardization. You get some of the uniqueness pulled out of it. So yeah, that's going to be a really important question and thing to explore as psychedelic training and therapies come available. What, like, who gets to regulate this? What are the state requirements? What do training institutes or training organizations need to know about like creating a curriculum that might meet a standard? And, the only thing that we really have to look at right now is like what's happening in Oregon and looking at like their requirements that the OHA has presented, and then maybe whatever kind of comes out of the FDA too, whenever like MAPS gets MDMA legal and approved, and then also with like say psilocybin through the FDA, what type of requirements may they want for practitioners to do this stuff. So that's long-term like kind of thinking and goals, like how do we become like some sort of gold standard here in the training and education world. And a lot of uncertainty too, right? Like it's a new field, and we all have to remind each other that too. Like we're all kind of building it together, which is exciting. And also like, oh man, so many like not really concrete answers.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But I think you are onto something there in terms of building a framework, because especially by taking your particular education and training in breathwork and applying it to, continuing to apply it in breathwork settings, but also using it in medicine sessions, we've seen it work remarkably well. And also it offers a, like you say, kind of a foundational way in which people can navigate the space, and which is very focused on harm reduction and neutrality and inner directedness, and really just like being there for the other person without really trying to interfere with their experience too much, but at the same time offering very consistent support and presence. So I think it is also something new, and I think there is a lot of good reasons why it could become a kind of a gold standard in providing sessions, because it's you can use it in so many different situations, and it seems to perform very well.
Yeah, and I guess I shouldn't say like create a new framework, but just advancing, right? Because we're pulling from like years of wisdom from the underground, from Stan. People are also bringing in that indigenous element too, but really advancing and building upon some of these other frameworks that we really kind of draw upon. Like, yeah, I mean that's something I've been really thinking about for the past few years, and kind of was part of my capstone project in my master's, like using breathwork as an adjunct, as a framework for navigating this, specifically with trauma. And so, that's something I'm constantly like looking back on, is that master's capstone project I did, and thinking about like, yeah, how to really start to build it out more. And so that's where my thinking is with the program. And yeah, just really, and that also comes back to the roots of psychedelics today, right? Like psychedelics today was started really with this idea of kind of like archiving some of our teachers' work. Then it turned into doing a podcast to talk about Stan Groff, talk about breath work. I mean, that is really kind of like where we came from. It's like this breath work background. And so coming back to that and really infusing that more with Vital, I think it's going to be really important to me. It's always a technique that I come back to, and it's been a really important technique. And, sometimes people may be like, oh, but breath work, it's not, you can't get as deep as a psychedelic. And, I think if you've been there before, if you've had psychedelic experiences, I would, say you can. I mean, obviously it's not going to be the same, right? There's those physiological aspects of taking a substance or a medicine, and it's having, different reactions with your, your body and your mind and receptors and stuff like that. But there's that core experience that we can get to. And I never really know how to label that, right? It's like we get to this core experience, and, I'll just say psyche, right? It's like we have an interaction with psyche finally, and boom, it's there. And we can get there with breath work. And so breath work, I think, is a really great, skill set to have for like understanding how to regulate your nervous system. For when things are getting too intense, you can come back to your breath and learn how to breathe. You can deepen your experience, go a little bit deeper into it, because maybe you've now have some sort of somatic awareness to know, oh, okay, I'm starting to get, too much arousal, right? I feel like I'm getting maybe into fight or flight. Like I feel my nervous system like, I need to get out of here, right? Or maybe it's a shutdown. And so being able to use the breath to modulate that in these experiences. And so, we talk about this idea of double bookkeeping. And I think somebody at one of our retreats said it was like really helpful. They're like, oh yeah, I realized I was kind of double bookkeeping. And that was really helpful to do. And so I forget where I was going. I know I'm talking about breath work, but my brain is like going down a million pathways right now.
All good.
Yeah. But right. So like, yeah, some people may not think breath work is as sexy or as powerful as like, having a psilocybin experience. And psilocybin is so transformative, so powerful, right? But for those that are new to psychedelics, I think it offers a great framework for dipping your toes into it. And, there's some people that may be nervous of taking it right off the bat. And then those experienced psychonauts, are able to then maybe go deep into an experience that they didn't know. I mean, that's what really turned me on to breath work, was being a psychonaut and going really far out there in my like early 20s and not having like, I mean, it just like blew me out. And then finding breath work, I was so skeptical and going, this isn't going to be anything. And having one of the most profound experiences of my life through that, and realizing like, whoa, I was processing all that trauma, all that stuff so differently. And it gave me a new way to process. And so, I think, it can help to deepen one's relationship with themselves. And also if you are working with psychedelics, with the medicine. But but I know some people hate it too, because they say it's too much work. And I get that. I have been in sessions where I'm like, oh, this is a lot. It is exhausting to keep up with the breath, but it's also been a great integration tool. It's been a great technique to kind of continue the work in between sessions and really kind of sit with yourself a little bit more. So.
And I think breathwork really honors the idea that we all come from a certain baseline and that people have different levels of intensity that they'd like, and like different comfort zones. And I think that's also fine. You know, it's not everybody is gonna go for the 5 grams in silent darkness, and I don't think everybody has to either. And you know, if there's people who are feeling a bit more anxious about going into new experiences, I think breathwork is a really great gateway into the psychedelic world. And then maybe some people really fall in love with the method, and then they actually want to continue with it. And so I think it sort of offers something for everyone, and that's what I really like about it.
Yeah, same. Cool. I think we probably should start wrapping up soon. I know that we have to maybe grab a meeting. Is there anything that we didn't dive into that we want to chat about?
Well, I don't know. I cannot really come to think of anything right now.
Our meeting person is calling.
I think the other meeting is happening right now. So I think we're going to just have to wrap up. But it was really lovely chatting with you. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is fun. Well, you can attend to that meeting. And then I guess I can close out a little bit. So that's totally fine, Johanna.
Okay, thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, sorry everybody. We were trying to squeeze this in and forgot that. Yeah, we had this meeting to attend to. So it's been really fun just chatting with Johanna to talk about Vital. She's been such an integral part of this program. So you may not have heard her on the podcast and really had any, I guess like relationship building on this platform in the podcast form. But Johanna has just been an integral awesome part of the Vital program, and just so fortunate, along with other team members, Diego and David and Joe and all of our folks on the marketing side of things, Alice, who's been helping us out with our retreats. So it's just been a really great time. And if you're curious in applying, we do have our applications open for our next Vital cohort in 2023. And that is kicking off on April 17th. We're kicking off with a little bit of an intro, kind of going over, outline of the program, kind of logistical things. And then we kick off our first class on Tuesday, April 18th. And that will be kicking off at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And so on Tuesdays, we have a webinar from 2 to 4 p.m. We do an hour kind of presentation, and then we switch over to a Zoom room where everybody gets to interact with the presenter. And then throughout the week, we break out into, I'm going to call these our integration groups. So we'll break out into smaller groups, and then that will be co-led by 2 instructors. And, you're kind of forming your little homeroom there with other students. And really, again, a time to really kind of digest, process, and dig into the material with your peers, with other students, and with the instructors. So we're super thrilled to be offering Vital again in 2023, 2024. So you can learn more at vitalpsychedelictraining.com. That's vitalpsychedelictraining.com. Applications are open. So if you're feeling called to take this deep dive for this year-long program with us at Vital, we'd love to have you. And again, you can apply. So thank you everybody for tuning in to this episode of Psychedelics Today to talk about Vital with Johanna as we are recording here in Montego Bay in Jamaica, and just wrapping up our first retreat and about to enter into our second retreat. So it's been awesome. So thank you everybody, and we will catch you on the next episode of Psychedelics Today.